Xanxus opened his eyes and stared at the white ceiling. Well, opened his eye. The other one was padded with something that was held in place by what felt like bandages. And with how sore it was, Xanxus was strongly disinclined to try and open it just yet. He wasn't an idiot. He also wasn't in medical. Vongola Medical had a distinctive smell lingering in it, of bleach and pain and sterility. Varia Medical smelled of blood and bleach and despair, which was slightly different, but not massively so. Varia Medical also did not have white ceilings. Magharibi had meticulously painted the ceilings with lurid colors and strange patterns, which made your stomach lurch and your head spin when you were drugged, or under the weather. The reasoning was that if you could get out of bed without falling over, after waking up to that, then you were probably well enough to leave. Varia Medical really was not the kind of place anybody wanted to linger in. Despite the food being guaranteed poison-free and the Varia in Medical being the only ones in the building actually invested in your well-being. It wasn't just the smell and the decor either. Medical felt uncomfortable. Like the assassins who had died there hadn't left and were watching you. There weren't any lingering angry ghosts there. Medical got regular cleansing, but it still felt unsettling. This room wasn't like that. It felt like an actual bedroom repurposed as a temporary sick room. With an actual double bed that he was lying in the middle of, walls painted in fern green rather than that awful medical mint, and actual paintings in gilded frames hanging from a picture rail. It also felt warm and comforting somehow, rather than sterile and bleak, like every other hospital Xanxus had ever been in. Although the fact that his wife was fast asleep on top of him, probably had a lot to do with the feeling of warmth and comfort. The presence of wife was the most obvious clue that he wasn't anywhere Vongola affiliated, although Xanxus wasn't entirely certain how he knew that. Logic dictated that to find him, she'd have had to come into contact with the Vongola somehow. But instinct, and Xanxus had excellent instincts and intuition despite not being a real Vongola, insisted that his wife was so opposed to no that she would go to a lot of effort to find other ways of doing things. And that if the Vongola was on fire his wife would break out the marshmallows and lead a campfire sing-along. Which was a pretty hilarious mental image really, but smiling pulled at a scar on his chin, so Xanxus stopped. Mostly so he could further examine said wife. What was slightly off-putting was that, despite it definitely being his wife sprawled face down on top of the blankets covering him, she didn't feel like he remembered her feeling. Less stormy, for one. Considerably more powerful. And with a full complement of guardians for another. And yet, despite the discontinuity between memory and reality, she still felt right. Like the change had taken place at a time he'd been present for but did not actually remember. So it was unfamiliar but not really alarming. Reaching out carefully to smooth a few errant curls behind his wife's ear, Xanxus noticed that somebody had moved his wedding ring from the chain around his neck to his left hand. Probably a good idea, he was never going to take it off again and everybody in the Vongola could just deal. He hoped a few of the old farts' brains exploded. The senile liars most of all. Then the door of the room opened and Xanxus tensed, which made his entire body scream at him. Because being tense aggravated still healing injuries all over. Really all over. The man who slipped inside was a total stranger. Despite his rather uncanny resemblance to Primo's Cloud Guardian. But despite Xanxus being certain he'd never so much as wandered past this man in the street, he was still familiar. Chilly sunshine, bright, distant and relentless. An Arctic summer morning so dry the air crackles with static. And a lightning bolt from the blue is a very real danger. Cold yet deceptive, sunburn is no less a hazard in winter than in summer. Sharp eyes, sharp words. Careful hands, and well-hidden attachment. Family. This was his wife's sun guardian. He knew it. Could feel it, even.
Good morning,
the son said quietly and conversationally in English, his accent almost stereotypically upper-class and snobbish.
My name is Draco Malfoy, and that is my cousin sprawled on top of you. It's the first time in over 2 days she's actually slept, so I'd prefer it if you didn't wake her.
In other words, hello, I'm one of your in-laws. And I'm going to be your interrogator for the morning. But politely, because your wife has been worrying herself sick over you. And I don't want to disturb her now she's finally crashed." Xanxus just raised an eyebrow at the son. His left eyebrow. Since the other one was buried under layers of bandages. Seriously? What kind of family name was Bad Faith? Never mind a first name like Draco. Although it could be a reference to the ancient Greek lawgiver or the circumpolar constellation.
Firstly, and most importantly, you have been frozen for 5 years, 7 months and 3 weeks.
Draco, the Lord look-alike, kindly paused after that bombshell, so that it had time to sink in properly. 5 years and what? The old fart had just up and left him, for the better part of 6 years? Would have gone on leaving him to rot for longer, since it was extremely unlikely his being defrosted was a Vongola-sanctioned operation. His wife had him here, wherever here was, with her people, instead of somewhere Vongola-affiliated. 6 years, pretty much, was a hell of a long time. Squalo would be 20. Xanxus' last memory of his reign was of a skinny 14-year-old. Hell, Belphegor would be 14 by now. It was more than half a lifetime, in Varia terms. Actually, the Varia could wait. How old was his wife now? 22? And he was still stuck at 16. Damn the old fart for his spineless procrastination, and ruining Xanxus' marriage before it even began. He couldn't begin to imagine how his wife felt about being all but widowed for 6 years. And he'd promised to protect her and kill her enemies. Which since she was here rescuing him, she had probably had to do herself. He'd broken his promise to her. Fuck. Never mind that it had been no that had put him on ice, it had been him getting himself in that position, which meant it was his fault as much as the old farts. His fault for believing that his foster father would do the right thing. Rather than the easy thing for once, despite all evidence to the contrary. What the hell had he been thinking? Suppressing the urge to burn everything around him to ash was hard. But Xanxus refused to lose control. It was all his own damn fault things had fallen like this, and taking it out on his wife and her guardian was just tacky. Especially when they'd been the ones bearing the brunt of his mistakes and going out of their way to fix them. Failure burned in his soul like acid and barbed wire, feeding on his pre-existing self-loathing.
Look at you, the whore's son trying to rule. No blood, no rights, no nothing, just a play toy for the Don to dote on in his old age, a pet with delusions of grandeur.
Then suddenly the hatred was mute, and his anger was dulled. Xanxus blinked at the ceiling, then glanced suspiciously at the sun, now sitting on the chair next to his bed and pressing a finger to his temple.
"That wasn't rain flames?"
he stated hoarsely, the first words to actually pass his lips. The sun smiled thinly. No actual amusement in the expression.
A calming charm. Having you set yourself on fire would set back your recovery significantly. And burning down the medical laboratory would not make you any friends.
More magic. But a different kind to what his wife had used to find him. Spells that calmed people sounded useful. Not everybody could be a rain. And not all rains were any good at calming people down. Then again, what he was experiencing wasn't really calmness. The anger and rage was still there, somehow, but he couldn't feel it.